All right, we're back. How's everyone doing?
Too bad, not too bad. How about yourself?
Oh God, I wasn't ready for that.
Oh no. Not questions. Not questions on this here podcast.
Oh dear. Right. So, for those of you that don't know, this is the Through Our Eyes podcast. I have not changed the category that we're in, but we are actually in the podcast now.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Going well.
Anyway, this is the podcast. This is Through Our Eyes podcast. For those who don't know, this is a podcast that we put together, Pan and I, to highlight marginalised content creators and their stories, shed a little light on what it's like with living as a marginalised group or creator, and just try and create an educational and informative chat about individuals' stories. Pan, would you like to introduce yourself and a little bit more about the Through Our Eyes project?
Can do. Hello, yes, I'm Pan, formerly known as Arthremis. I'm saying that for now because people are still very confused who I am, so that is helpful just to know. The Through Our Eyes project, which is, I guess, currently on hiatus due to work, but started a year and a bit ago now, when essentially on streams I realised that I wanted to get together a bunch of marginalised creators and try and speak with them and learn about perspectives I didn't have and others didn't have, and perspectives of my own that I could share. And from that we ended up realising that while getting 30 people together over 10 hours is very fun and offers lots of options for discussion, it doesn't let you learn about individual people too much. And so the idea of the podcast came about, and that is where we are today.
Okay, sorry, I was trying to mention about the questions. So, alerts will be off, I think, for the duration of this, so that we can concentrate on what we're discussing. If at any point something is particularly triggering or uncomfortable, feel free to step away, take a break. If you'd like to submit questions as we go, there is a channel points redemption in the settings. It should be one of the first ones that you can access. Yeah, so if everyone is good, we will get started. All right. Would you like to introduce yourself, your pronouns, your name, your handles, etc.?
Hello, I'm Nitebytes. My pronouns are they, he. If Nitebytes is too much of a mouthful, you can go with Night. Most of my friends do. Some also call me Bites. One in particular says the night that bites. Not sure if I'm called. I think I probably am, but yes. So that is me. Most of what I do on, well, I'm a variety streamer, kind of splitting my variety between playing drums and playing games. So it's about as variable as one can get, which means that I do actually have two computers. I've got one room with the drums and the computer and the cameras all over the place. And then I've got this one. This is the gaming rig.
And where can people find you?
So I've got socials on most platforms. For the most part, I'm Nitebytes on Twitch, TikTok. I'm Nitebytes FM on Twitter because there was a German band who already had the name Nitebytes, even with the same spelling. Nitebytes. I thought I was unique when I picked it, but apparently a German band got there first.
And what brings you here today?
Well, 5 years ago, I had a little bit of a, I would say meeting of the minds, but lampposts don't have much of a mind, at about 40 miles an hour. I used to be a motorcyclist. I'd spent 8 years commuting to London and back for work, and got a job far more local. A mere 20-mile round trip rather than, sorry, not round trip, each way trip, rather than the 40 plus each way I was doing to London. So nice, simple ride, nice country lanes, the whole 9 yards, with a little bit of dual carriageway just to open up the throttle and enjoy the summer weather. And it was actually was August 2017, tail end of August. 1 minute I'm riding down the dual carriageway, doing the national speed limit, which was confirmed by eyewitnesses later. I'm not spinning a line there. People said, yeah, it wasn't speeding or anything. Next thing I know, I'm on my back in an ambulance talking to a paramedic and a police officer with no recollection of what happened in between. Apparently, I'd lost control of the bike. No clue how, but... and where I'd veered off the road, I managed to home in on that much space where there was a lamppost. And so rather than being thrown clear, as would normally happen if the bike hits something, because there was a little fence around the lamppost, rather than hit that and get thrown clear, I hit the lamppost and fell back onto the bike. So whatever speed I was doing at the point that I hit the lamppost, there was some deceleration between me leaving the seat and hitting the lamppost. The policeman reckons that I was probably doing about 40 miles an hour by the time that I made contact. Now, to give some idea of parallel around statistics, if a pedestrian not wearing any protection or armour was to be hit by a car with all the wonderful crumple zones and things that modern cars have at 40 miles an hour, that pedestrian would have a 1 in 10 chance of survival. And visibly, I pretty much walked away from doing that to a lamppost. I can attribute that largely to wearing the protection, crash helmet, full biker gear. I mean, it was summer, it was hot. And every time I look out at other riders that are not wearing a crash helmet, not wearing gloves, not wearing all the gear, I look at them and think that they could have a nasty accident coming up. But I was very lucky. The crash helmet took the blunt of the injury. It's split all down this side. The visor went flying. God knows where half of that was. My glasses exited the crash helmet. Now, crash helmets are fairly tight on your head. They have to be, which means that the glasses are pressed into your head a little bit. My glasses left the crash helmet. No one knows where they went. So the 40 miles an hour is probably fairly accurate. In fact, I've still got the crash helmet if anyone wants to see. I kind of kept it as a memento. It also forms one of the emotes on my channel because I'm that. But yeah. So the visor was gone. We've got all this cracked up here. That's what took all the impact. And yeah, so a quick trip to A&E, and so I give me a second. I'm having trouble getting words in the right order.
No, it's fine. You take your time.
They trundled me into the ambulance, and when I came to, they were still on site and hadn't left yet. The policeman was trying to get as much information as possible. Apparently, I'd been talking to the policeman for a good 5-10 minutes before the part I remember kicks in. I was apparently unconscious for a time, but no one can be sure exactly how long. It was the paramedics that brought me around. And they had me strapped on this backboard that keeps your neck all straight and got all this padding around my head so that I could not move a muscle from sort of the shoulders upwards. And the next part that I have no recollection of that happened was me apparently taking a selfie whilst I was on the stretcher with all this guff around me, sending it to my boss to say, might not be at work tomorrow, had a bit of an incident, and then posting out on Twitter saying, no stream tonight, with the picture.
Okay.
Cool.
which when she saw it, annoyed my daughter somewhat because I hadn't deemed to tell her. The first she realised was that there was this picture of me in an ambulance on Twitter.
Priorities, obviously.
Yeah. Anyway, off to A&E. X-rays, MRI scans, all manner of tests and checks. And then as I'm sort of being discharged, I said, yeah, you've probably got a concussion. Is anyone coming to pick you up? No one knows where I am. You best phone someone then. So half an hour of me phoning around trying to find someone that could come and pick me up, because of course the bike was a wreck and there was no way I could ride it anyway. Eventually I find someone. Oh yeah, someone will be there in half an hour. So a friend of a friend tore us out to the hospital to pick us up, to whom I'm eternally grateful. And as I'm getting dressed to walk out to the waiting room to wait, the orderly says, what's that on the back of your leg? Is that new? Now what I hadn't even noticed was that apparently when I'd fallen back onto the bike, my leg had fell onto the exhaust. Now, I was wearing Kevlar jeans, which aren't the best protective gear, but they had hip pads, they had knee pads, and they're resistant to gravel rash. What they're not resistant to is heat transfer. So what I didn't realise, and they didn't really do much about, was the big burn on the back of my leg. The hospital weren't generally the best, my best experience of an A&E department ever, because A, they didn't take me back in to look at the mark on the back of the leg. They didn't give me or the chap that picked me up any care instructions for anyone with a concussion. They just literally said, yep, discharged, off you go. And that was that. So I thought, well, I'll be fine. So the next day I drove into work. Wasn't the best plan. I had a bit of a headache, so went home early. I can see that it'd take a breath of, this man's mad.
No, it was just a case of, that's what your doctors probably should have been saying, is maybe don't drive straight after a concussion, but
anyway,
you aren't told something you don't know.
Yeah, and when you're concussed, you don't think of these things, which is half the point. But yeah, I had a bit of a headache, so we went back, went to the GP and said, look, all this has happened. And she said, well, okay, you've probably got a concussion. Here's some instructions on how to look after yourself. Have someone with you for the next 24 hours. Don't doze off to sleep unless it's like nighttime. If it's the middle of the day, don't let yourself fall asleep, all that stuff. So I had a friend who very kindly took some time out from work and was looking out for me. And for the next sort of week or so, it was still pretty much the same. And that week sort of went into a month. Now, in that period, I'd gone and finally gotten the blister on the back of the leg sorted, which by the time I'd gotten it sorted, had gotten infected, and so I had to go to the specialist burns unit over in, oh god, where is it? Where they treated all the burnt pilots from World War II. That was where they sent me for this burn. It's just the size of a Mars bar, but it's what they called a full depth burn. So there was another friend who was driving me to and from there. For this period, I was very, very reliant on friends because I really couldn't do much for myself at all. And after a month, I was signed to go back into work, but was still having the headache, still had tinnitus, still a little bit dazed and confused, to put it mildly. But where I was working said, you've kind of got to come back or we're going to cut your pay. So in between going backwards and forwards to the burns unit to get my legs looked at, and going to my GP to say, look, things still aren't right. Eventually, after 3 months, my GP said, "Yeah, I think you've got post-concussion syndrome, which comes under the heading of traumatic brain injury." And went on to explain brain injuries generically to me, where anything that causes damage to the brain is a brain injury. So things like strokes, meningitis, all cause brain injuries, but they are acquired brain injuries, whereas something that comes from a traumatic blow, blunt force trauma, that's a traumatic brain injury, which is what I have. And then sent me out to the community brain injury team, which consists of a physiotherapist, a neuropsychologist, and it's a team of people in different specialities to help with rehabilitation. So where my balance has been absolutely abysmal, It's still abysmal now, but it's far, far better than it was. The physio was helping me with that. The speech therapist was helping me with the words that I kept losing and keep losing now, but less so. The neuropsychologist was helping me with other facets of it, like my emotional management and that kind of thing. And between those people, they all said, "You went back to work too soon." And I said, "What do you mean when I went back to the work the next day?" No, when you went back after a month. You should have had at least 3 months off. Okay, have I done any damage by doing that? Possibly. Fun. So there's that. One of the things that has come out of it, from my knowledge, is that no two brain injuries are the same. Be it through illness or through impact. Because of where it happens around the brain, it's all going to affect every brain differently. And because every brain's wired differently in the first place, no two brain injuries are ever going to be the same. So some people might get a recovery after 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years. Some people may never recover, so back to where they were. So where I am now, I still face a fair few issues in terms of what I can do, what I can't do, compared to what I used to do. And one of the biggest things for me was the fact that I'm almost literally a different person. I don't always like the same things that I used to like. My taste in just about everything has changed to a degree. My ability to taste and smell has flatlined. So whenever you see a streamer with the horrible flavored jelly bean things, the Bean Boozled, I thought, I could do that. Then I thought, wait a minute, that would be cheating. Until I realized they did chili flavor ones, because capsaicin hits the pain centers in your mouth, pain receptors in your mouth, rather than the taste. So I still get the burn from capsaicin. So hot and spicy foods, love them. Similarly, menthol, same thing. It hits different senses that give the sensation of cold. So I can have menthol, I can have spicy food and get some experience from it. But if you were to give me a rich steak or whatever, it would taste like lamb or chicken, which is a little weird to. So food-wise, I go by color, texture, and whether it's hot or cold. And interestingly, you can have both hot and cold at the same time, which is weird.
So just to clarify, are you saying that your experience of taste is more that the range has decreased, or that things taste like different things than they did before?
Yeah, it's a weird one to try and explain, because everyone knows what what steak and lamb and chicken and veggies and potatoes taste like. But I suppose the best way to describe it is, you watch a TV show in, let's say it's a food TV show, MasterChef or something, in 4K. Now watch that in black and white. That's how my taste works.
Right.
So the meat suddenly goes from having these wonderful colours to looking very, very much like anything else. It's all bland, it's all samey. And there's not a lot of shade between them. And where smell is also a part of that, smell is the same thing. So again, I suppose it's one of the advantages where having to clean up after the dog, I don't notice the smell of it, so I don't mind doing it, whereas my youngest is not so keen. So yeah, a lot of those yucky jobs that have a smell, I've got no problem doing, because I don't smell it. My balance is shot to pieces, so maneuverability wise, I walk with a stick. For the longest time, getting in and out of the bath was a perilous experience. The number of times I fell over getting in or out the bath was ridiculous. So I ended up having to get my bathroom remodeled to have the bath removed. So now I've got a shower unit and a stool that I can sit on, because you can't fall down if you're sat on a stool in the shower. I still lose words. I get fatigued very, very easily. Learning new things is an absolute drain, and reading things is a drain. So when it comes to, for my job, for instance, every now and then I have to go through a refresher course on all our regulations and stuff, because I work in the financial sector. So we've got annual courses, and it takes me 2 or 3 times as long as everyone else to do this. And I've got special dispensation from HR because of slow cognitive process, that it takes me that much longer to A, read the information, and then B, understand what the questions at the end are asking. And that is a big thing. I quite often don't understand what people are saying because I'm not either on that wavelength, or it's taken me a lot longer to comprehend what's gone before to try and work out what the question's actually aiming at. And that has knock-on effects to gaming. Even something like some of the racing games, I can't do the really fast racing games because everything happens too fast for my brain to process. I'm kind of, it's almost like running on a 486 in the world of the current chips, which I've conveniently forgotten the names of.
Okay.
So that there's a lot of trying to cope with all those things to get around.
So, again, sorry if this was covered because my brain apparently is not having a good day. When did all this happen? How long ago was this incident?
So the lamppost incident was August 2017. So just coming up for 5 years ago.
Okay, right. And was all of this experienced from the offset, or has this been something that's developed the longer that you've been adjusting to having the trauma?
It's all been there since the offset, but I think because I was, for the first couple of months, really sort of, to borrow a song title, dazed and confused. It took me a good while to realize just how much was different and wasn't working right. And the first 3 months, I really still was very much in a fog of not being completely aware of everything that's gone on around me. So there has been an improvement since those first few months, but it came to a point where I now haven't really seen an improvement over the last few years. Having done physiotherapy, having done speech therapy, having completed the course with the neuropsychologist, having done counselling for some of the mood swings, everything still happens. I still have that headache that I've had since day one. It's mostly fairly sort of ignorable in terms of pain levels. But in the early days, it would spike into migraines sort of 2 or 3 times a week, which was the point on that first day where I just had to leave work and go home because, in fact, it's not just that I went home that day. I left my car there and someone took me home because I was so bad I couldn't drive. I still get those migraines that completely flatten me. But through understanding what's gone on, the GP's got me on medication that helps keep some of that in check. It doesn't stop it completely, but it's reduced the instances now to maybe 2 or 3 times a month rather than 2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah. When you mentioned the selfie that you put on Twitter, I immediately remembered it because I used to be the community manager for Elite Dangerous, which obviously you've played for quite a long time, and I know you were streaming it around the same sort of time. And it was just as you said that, I'm like, oh my god, I did see that when you posted it. I didn't know you told Twitter before you told your kid.
I mean, to be fair, my kid was in her 20s at the time and has a family of her own, but...
Yeah. Very fair.
Okay, so let's get a bit more into what you've found the most challenging. What's been the biggest effect on your life from this, both physically, emotionally, and socially?
I think the biggest part for me was understanding that who I was before I hit the lamppost and who I was after are two different people, and that the differences are far enough apart that I need to mourn that other person. And for God knows how long, I had a really hard time doing that, because I always have been, and to a certain extent still am, missing the things that I couldn't do, and wondering why people were expecting me to do other certain things when I had no inclination in that direction at all. And that was one of the hardest things, for me to get over, in the fact that I wanted to be the old me, and I wanted other people to understand that I'm not, and that was in some cases easier than others, but that was a hard point to try and get across to people, that it has led to a change in personality. And there were situations at work. At the time, I was in a very high stress role at work. And when you suddenly find that your emotions aren't so much on a graded scale going smoothly from 1 through to 10, suddenly you're on a switch that goes from 0 to 11 with nothing in between. And after a couple of instances of that happening in those high stress situations, that led to a conversation with my then boss, who was very, very good about it, far better than he could or possibly even should have been. Took me into a room after one of these and said, so some of the staff have noticed that you're on a bit of a short fuse at the moment. Look into getting some counselling, or I'll get you a P45. There was no going to HR. There was no going through even a first unofficial warning. It was a quiet conversation to one side. Sort your shit out, or you're going to go. And on top of that, the company did find and pay for a series of therapy sessions, which again they didn't have to do. So, and that therapist really did help me get things in check. I am still prone to those mood switches. I haven't lost the switch and gained the slider back, but I've kind of found a divert switch that holds the explosion off for a time being. The plus side is that it's not just the anger emotion that's prone to that, it's all of them. So if something sad happens, I will be away bawling in a corner probably for the next 20 minutes. If something funny happens, I'm going to be incapacitated with hysterical laughter for the next 15-20 minutes. In fact, one of those happened at work, and I was getting the weirdest looks from people that were going by. One of my co-workers had come in very hungover one morning, and part of my morning routine was to have one of those vitamin C fizzy things you drop in the water. And he said, "Oh, they're good for hangovers, aren't they? Can I have one of those?" "Yeah, I've got plenty spare. There you go." Rather than putting it in a glass of water, he threw it in his mouth. And while he's busy there foaming at the mouth with orange stuff coming out, the only thing he could say was, "I feel like I've just necked a bag of Fantastics." And that was me corpsed for the next 20 minutes. And
Wow.
Later that afternoon, I had to explain to someone why I couldn't work for those 20 minutes. And I started laughing all over again when I tried to tell him the story. I can still see the look on the guy's face as he's realising what he's just done.
I mean,
Like
I find that rather amusing.
Machine.
I find that rather amusing because one of my housemates used to do that on purpose. Hangover cure,
fun?
straight in mouth. Apparently, it was just easier than drinking it because it watered it down.
That explains why he did. Presumably, my colleague had heard from a friend that was the way to do it. It was like, okay. So yeah, I'm still prone to the extremes, which can be a little disconcerting for people, and especially in family when I'm telling off my youngest for doing things that they shouldn't have done. It's very hard to keep that in check and keep it at the zero when inside I am really angry that they've done this thing. That is a hard thing to try and keep in check and divert to somewhere else at a later date. But the whole idea of not now, let it go later is roughly how I handle these things, which is what the therapist guided me through. That and a more comedic way of envisioning the person that's caused this explosion of anger in an Acme sense, with the cartoon anvil dropping on their head and all these other comedic things happening to try and divert from the anger.
So
a good set of coping mechanisms then, essentially.
Yes.
So initially, how did you find relearning who you were?
That was tough. One of the big things that I picked up initially to try and do as physiotherapy, to try and get the left side of my body working as it used to. Right at the start, when I was really trying to believe that I could get back to who I was, I traded in my acoustic drum kit and got an electronic drum kit so that I could practice as long as possible without annoying the neighbours. And one of the first things I realised was that that was when I realised that my left side really wasn't what it used to be. I used to be able to play double bass drum music and rhythms very, very easily, but now the left leg just kind of does its own thing and not in rhythm at all. And I haven't got as much control over my left hand as I want, and my accuracy. Fine motor control, I think, is the proper term, of getting the bead of the stick on the part of the drum or cymbal that I want it to hit is not where it needs to be. Now, where I stream the drums, I've got a number of camera changes triggered off various parts of the drums. Part of the reason I did that was so that I could focus on needing to hit specific areas, because for example, a cymbal. It's got three parts. I should have brought one in to show, actually, but there's the middle part that's kind of like a dome. That's called the bell. Then as it goes out towards the edge, that's called the bow, as it literally bows in shape a little. And then you've got the edge. I've got triggers set up on the bell of the cymbals to change cameras, with the idea that if I can hit the bell, because it's a fairly small target on an electronic drum set, I'm improving my accuracy. And similarly, where my endurance and stamina isn't where it used to be, playing drums for 2-3 hours is going to build up the stamina. Doesn't always work that way. When I said all this to the physiotherapist, he said, yeah, that's actually a pretty good thing, because it's covering core balance, trying to stay upright on the stool, which balance is a thing I have problems with. It's working on coordination, and where I'm taking a lot of songs that I've never heard before, it's also trying to work on the cognitive speed, because as I'm hearing the music for the first time, I've got to translate that into playing and keeping up with it. So there's a lot of therapy in what I do. And looking out fairly widely across therapies, there is a case for music therapy and a case for rhythm therapy as real things in medicine. A lot of Alzheimer's sufferers, for instance, can respond very well to certain pieces of music because they trigger memories. Music is one of those things that locks into memory on a very, very deep level. And you can find that it doesn't take more than maybe a bar or two of a song to bring memories flooding back around that song. Sometimes they'll be good, sometimes they'll be bad, but music can bring memories back like that. and rhythm very much the same. You can find a rhythm in everything. A heartbeat has a rhythm, and you can build music and patterns off of that. So drumming and music as a therapy is a really, really good thing. Then it's got a physicality to it as well. Some of the songs that I've played, I used to wear a heartbeat monitor. Unfortunately, I broke it some while ago, so I haven't worn it for a while. But one of the songs that I played managed to get my heart rate up to something like 156 beats per minute, which is pretty quick, I gather. To the point that some folks in chat were thinking my heart was going to explode or something. I did after that go to the GP and say, hey, was this bad? And the GP said, no, but it was close. Don't go above 160. There we go then. So the drumming side of things has helped me continue therapy on a whole load of levels past where my courses with the NHS stopped. And I like to think that where over the first year, 18 months, I did make a heck of a lot of progress, I probably wouldn't have if I hadn't been drumming. So I realize I've diverted away from the question, and I've actually forgotten what the actual question was now because I've gone so far off on my own tangent.
How did you find this rediscovering who you were as a person now after the injury?
So largely through my friends. Having done all that and gotten to a point they have said, yes, you have improved. Yes, you have improved. But there are also friends that have said, you're still not the person you were, and you're probably not going to be. And it's taken messages from those friends for me to come to terms with the fact that what we've got here is Night 2.0. I am different. I have different tastes in things, even before going back into the whole taste smell thing. Different tastes in music, different tastes in what TV shows I watch, what streams I consume. I have different interests generally that I do when I'm not in the day job. So I am very much a different person in the same body shell. And that took a little bit of getting used to. But having had friends come back to me and point this out and say, yes, you are different, but we're cool with that, was really, really helpful.
And as we've just had in the questions from Pan there, as you could ask it yourself because you are co-host.
I know, I could, but I wanted to be... Knight was making a very good point, and we both know what it's like to be interrupted and completely forget your train, so I thought I'd write it down politely. Thank you, Drac. Rude. Anyway, I had two questions, but one of them I hold on to, so I'll go with the first question first, Knight, if that's okay.
Go for it.
Just in regards to the drumming, is that something that you found has helped with letting that anger out later instead of, in a particular time?
Without a doubt.
I grew up with a dad who had fairly serious anger issues because of ill health, and it's like I don't really know what he did to actually let any of that anger out. So it's interesting if something like drums has worked for you.
It really does. If I'm really, really angry and I've got to let it out somewhere, then yes, I will play some fairly angry music and just thrash the heck out of the drums. Now, the drums I have, the cymbal pads are rubber. The edges of the drums have rubber covering on them, so they don't chew up drumsticks like a regular acoustic kit does. But I have still managed to break sticks on this drum kit when I've been angry.
But the drum kit itself has survived?
The drum kit itself has survived, yes.
That's all right, then.
The sticks are still breakable. So I've only broken two, but that's still pretty impressive on an electronic drum kit. But the kit is still in one piece.
That's cool.
And a side question. What's your favourite anger song to play to?
Oh, that varies. Generally, I would probably say something pretty heavy. I'm not very good at playing it, but it's very cathartic to play. Painkiller, Judas Priest.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was what was in my head as well.
It's the only reason that I asked, because I was like, it's gonna be something good. It's gotta be something good.
It's a lot of fun to play. It's got a lot of double bass drum, which my left leg does not want to comply with. But it's just very, very cathartic because you're hitting everything hard.
Yes, that's pretty good. The other question I had was just, are there any parts of your personality that you prefer now? Obviously, your friends have said we still like you, which is definitely something I completely understand, because I've had times where it seems I'm a different person to how I used to be, and it definitely is helpful when people are like, it's not a bad thing though. But are there any parts of yourself that you prefer?
I think the amount of control that I have over my emotions that I have to have because they are on a switch, I'm actually preferring, because in the past I didn't have that, and I could still get angry and I could still get upset, but it would be there and in the moment rather than perhaps in a more controlled fashion. I like the fact that it is now, I have the tools to take it away and explode in private, or put it into something creative or something that is an outlet, which I didn't have before. So I think that, which I've picked up as a coping mechanism, is something that I far prefer from who I am now to who I was.
Very, very fair. Is there anything that you found yourself liking that you didn't like before, but that you're like, oh, I'm glad I like this now? Or is it just a bit like, oh, I can't keep listening to Barbie Girl?
I do have a habit of listening to the same songs over and over and over. And before anyone asks, the song of the minute, the song of the minute does change, but the song of the minute at the moment is Forsaken by Dream Theater. It's a gorgeous piece of music. I love it. But I have got a much wider appreciation of music now than I used to. In the before times, which works for both pre-COVID and pre-Lamppost, I was very much a middle of the road rock, prog, metal fan. Didn't like thrash, didn't like punk, didn't like EDM, didn't like anything that was at the time I would have said computerized. Wasn't played with a proper instrument. Now that is all out the window. And where it's not my usual wheelhouse, because I just haven't had years of listening to this stuff. Doing music streams with people bringing their tastes in, I am finding that there is so much more music that I am capable of liking. And that is something I really like about myself as well, which I couldn't have done before. Yes, I am looking at you with the K-pop.
You mentioned that you are still working.
Yes.
How have you found adjusting from your pre-capabilities to now?
So this gets a little bit awkward, and I have to be very careful how I talk around this, because obviously a company won't say exactly why something happens. But after a few instances, prior to going into counselling for the anger outbursts, not long after that, the role that I was in, which was a very high-stress major incident role, suddenly became surplus to requirements and was made redundant. And they said, we've got a very nice redundancy package here. You can take that away and go work somewhere else. Or we've got this other role here for you that we'd like you to take. And the fact that they said that we would like you to take told me that what they actually were saying was, we can't see you doing this role as you are because you don't have those capabilities anymore, but we don't want to lose you as a member of staff, so we're offering you this other role. Now, it was on a much lower salary, but it had none of the stress. So having gone to a couple of interviews elsewhere and not securing another job, I did take the offered role on the lower salary. It was a significant change, like a 50% salary cut, but still on a fairly good salary. But once all the stress of that role was gone, I found that the role that I was now in and still in now was very suited to how my brain works. I have processes that I follow with checklists, and it's the same thing every time. And there's a routine to it. There's a a commonality to everything I'm doing. And it's very, very straightforward. There's no grey areas at all, no areas that could cause confusion, and there's nowhere near as much stress. So I have transitioned to a different role within the same company that is much more suited to my capabilities as they are now.
Which, yeah, I mean, that's in this kind of scenario something that honestly I would hope most places would do, but it never seems to happen.
Yeah, you can never tell. So I feel very lucky that they have done that for me.
But has there been any challenges for you coming to accept that? Or has it been entirely like a, yeah, no, this is exactly what I needed?
I've come to accept that, yes, and realise that it was exactly what I needed. But at the time, I was angry as all heck that they were making me redundant when clearly there was, in my mind, a need for that role still. But what they've now done is diversify that role out to 3 or 4 different people who are at a much higher tier than I was then. So possibly there was some reorganization thing behind it as well. But I was very angry because I felt like it was being done because of the issues I was facing through my injury. But looking back, I can see that whether that was being done because of that or not, whichever way you look at it, I'm still in a better place now. And my previous boss did come to me and say, okay, we're putting a management role into the team. Would you be interested in going for it? And I quite honestly said, no, thanks. I'm quite happy where I am.
And have you found that since then your workplace have been supportive of you and your needs?
It's all been very dependent on who my manager was at the time. Since the accident, I've had 4 different managers. That's not because my role's changed 4 times, but because literally the management role in the team has changed 4 times. The first manager that I had was really chill and understanding of everything. The second manager I had was the absolute worst. He was forever calling me up on things that he didn't think were right. I did. He was forever saying that he didn't think I had a disability. He thought I was playing it up. And I got to the point where I was calling HR into every one-to-one meeting with him so that he would have to toe the line and be absolutely straight down the middle, to the point that he stopped calling one-to-one meetings.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. A short while after that, he left the company and went to work somewhere else, and I was so relieved. I've then had 2 bosses since then who have been really, really good, really understanding. They've worked with, we've got a occupational health company that works with us. So I've had a referral out to them. They've come in, done assessments, and made some suggestions on how the company can be more accommodating, even suggesting things like looking at specific fonts that can supposedly help with memory. It's subsequently been proved that the font doesn't, but back in 2018 that wasn't necessarily the case. There was a font, there still is I think, called Sans Forgetica, supposedly designed to be more difficult to read so that once you've read it you understand it and remember it better. It's been studied and proved it doesn't work, but the company looked at buying that in so that I could have better chances of understanding and remembering things.
Hey, kudos to them even trying, though.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, okay, yeah, that's a
out there.
That's a thing. But kudos to them trying.
And where I have issues with a very high rate of photosensitivity, They let me wear I suppose it's like a card shark's hat. It's almost like a peak cap, but without the hat part on top, just so that where the sun would come in from the windows or the skylights, it wouldn't dazzle me and blind me. So they let me wear that during the day. Because I'm a blue badge holder, they got me a disabled parking spot right by the door. They made a lot of accommodations for me to make it a lot easier to do my job, which is really, really helpful. And then COVID hit, and I've been working from home ever since, which is amazing. Where a lot of people have had to go back into the office into their offices since lockdown. The company I work for have said, actually, we'll leave it up to your manager's decision as to how many days a week you come into the office. So again, my manager, towards the end of lockdown, moved from where we are to almost the other end of the country. So she's not going to be in the office every week. And she said, well, I'm not going to be in the office every week, so you're not going to be either. So again, I've got a very, very good manager, very flexible. Literally since, what would have been about March 2020, I have had one day in the office. And that was just as a big team meeting to meet the new team members, and that was it. So the fact that they're letting me work from home, and my boss had already said, if we do have to go back into the office, given the standard of your work while we've been working through the lockdowns, I will back a petition to HR to have you working from home in your contract. So again, my boss is very, very accommodating, very understanding, and looking to make modifications and accommodations where necessary. And I wish there were more bosses like her in the world. I really do.
Yeah.
Yep.
That sounds really, really, really good, and that's very, very refreshing to hear.
Yeah, I am very, very lucky with the past two bosses that I've had. They've been really good.
Quite often, I think you'll agree, Pan, is that we hear a lot of horror stories, and it's usually the not so positive side effects of trying to work with a disability, and it is really nice to actually hear that sometimes it does actually go the way that it should, and your workplace treat you like a human being.
Yeah, with my immediate manager, I've seen both sides from one of the four that I've had since then. One of them was the negative side that you hear so much of, but the others have been really, really good. So one bad out of three. I think I've gotten very, very lucky, and I'm very appreciative for the bosses that I've had.
Okay, so we'll just move on to the next question, which is, what's something you wish people knew about? What stigmas or misconceptions do you experience?
Oh, Lord. I suppose the first one is that brain injury doesn't have a look. We don't walk around with a neck collar or bandages on our head, so you can't see that we've got an injury. A lot of folks with brain injuries don't have a walking aid. I do because my balance is shot. And a lot of folks, I mean, it wasn't until, I suppose, 2 or 3 years in that I realized that there was the sunflower lanyard thing that I could get. Which I do now wear when I go out, when I go shopping, when I go for a meal or whatever, so that people can see that it's not just the stick that's the problem, there's something else as well. But because I have issues with understanding things, because I have emotional issues, and although I don't think I've mentioned it yet, but if I've become really exhausted and I've been overtaxing my brain, my balance gets worse and I start to walk like I'm drunk and my speech starts to slur. So I can give the impression that I'm drunk even though I don't drink, which is something that my GP said when she diagnosed the post-concussion syndrome. She said, you're probably going to want to stop drinking because it will hit you 10 times harder. So I don't drink, but I can look like I've had 10 pints if I've had a really, really exhausting day. And I I was directed to a charity called Headway, who help people with brain injuries, be that traumatic or acquired. And they have that. One of the things they do is issue people with an ID card, so that if you are picked up by the police or whatever, you can show them that, and they can immediately see that there is something different, and that they can then understand how they can help or how they need to treat you. It's I suppose a bit like the Medicaid bracelets for people with diabetes and whatever. So people understanding that there is that I might not necessarily get what they're saying first time round would be really good, or even second time, to be honest. That would be really handy. And if people could realize that just because their mate Bob had a brain injury, Bob's not going to have the same reactions to anything that I'm going to have. And so for them to say, oh yeah, he had a brain injury, he had this, you're not like that, you don't have a brain injury. No, that's not how it works. And I think that's probably a similar thing with a lot of chronic conditions, because they present different ways in different people. And I think it would be a much easier place if we almost had some sort of neon sign over our head that said this. You know, like the characters in an MMO that have got a big eye above their head so you can click for more information. I'm sure in a virtual world there can be some sort of thing devised where you could look on your phone, click the button, and it would scan the thing, and someone, oh, okay, he's got a brain injury, what, this, job done. And then you know how to safely interact with someone. Or just for the world to become more accepting and more aware that not everyone is the same. As for misconceptions, a question that I got asked, I think it might be back in 2018 or 2019. So did you get a superpower? No, we don't. No, we not really not. No, we've changed. We are not the same person we are. But this isn't a Clark Kent Superman kind of change, nor is it a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde kind of change. It's just, well, except maybe on the younger side it might be, but that's a different thing. We don't get superpowers. The closest I can say to that is that I did lose a lot of my phobias. I gained a couple as well, but I used to be very I've forgotten the word, spider-phobic. That'll do. I know it's a fairly common phobia, but I really couldn't be doing with spiders. And I didn't realize that I suddenly wasn't until, and it's another work story. Apologies for all the work stories tonight.
So good.
My boss was sat next to me and she suddenly froze. What's up? There's a spider on my desk. And I looked. It wasn't a small spider. It was a big house spider. And without realizing that I wasn't actually afraid, I just reached out, let the thing crawl onto my hand, and then carried it outside and put it on the grass. It wasn't until I got back and sat down and my boss said, that was really cool. Thank you for that. I'm such a spider phobe. And I said, so am I. And she looked at me and was like, are you sure about that? Well, actually, no. I used to be. I lost most of my phobias. What I have found since is that heights are now a thing I can't do. Even if I'm watching something on TV and the camera pans from two people in a spaceship to out of the window, my stomach drops. Okay, so I can't do that anymore. And also, I slightly related. I can't take plane flights anymore. I get massively travel sick, which is possibly related to the balance being whacked out. But yeah, so travel is a thing that causes problems. Which is one of the reasons that I'm not going to TwitchCon this year.
Don't remind me.
Yeah.
It was going to TwitchCon in 2019 that suddenly pointed out that I had trouble flying. Because, again, previously it had never been a problem. Whether I've been on school holidays or whatever, and been flown out to wherever the school was going to. Absolutely no problem. I'd love to get a wing seat, look out the window, enjoy the view. Did that going to TwitchCon in 2019, and I felt rough. I felt so rough. I thought, okay, maybe I just had a bad breakfast or something. So I was very careful about what I have for breakfast on the way back. And no, it made no difference. Flying is not a thing I can do anymore.
So, just to bring it back to our topics, is there any stigmas that you experience yourself from those around you, or for example,
not
when
from those
streaming?
around me, no.
Or
To be honest, I've been very lucky on both counts. The folks around me are a very, very good community, very accommodating and understanding when it comes to limitations. And if they don't understand something, rather than make an assumption and go with it, they ask. Is it okay to say this? Is it okay to ask that? And the fact that they do that is really good. And again, I feel blessed to be part of that community because of it. The folks that come into the stream, I tag all my streams AMA, so I'm leaving myself open for people to ask questions, because I think there's not enough said about brain injury and what effects it can have on people and what sort of different effects it can have. So I'm always open for people to ask me questions and to talk about it, and I have done at length on stream before. So it's something that I don't think has come in negatively into my channel. And that there's a couple of viewers that I get now that also have brain injuries, and I think are happy to have found someone else with which they've got a commonality. So I think I'm pretty lucky. The worst things that I've come across really are out in the wider world, where people might say, "Oh, it's just a concussion. You'll get over that in a couple of weeks." Well, it's been 5 years and going. Oh, you're just amping it out for the sympathy. No, I'm really not. If I could get rid of this headache, if I could get rid of his balance problems, I would, believe me. But yeah, there's a lot of that out there, especially when you start getting into public transport. Now, the idea of standing on a train or on a bus absolutely terrifies me, because I know I would go base over apex. So I'm always one of those people that says, "Excuse me, would you mind giving up your seat? I have trouble standing." And they look at me and they see a middle-aged person, admittedly slightly on the overweight side, and they look me up and down and say, "No, you're fine standing." "No, I'm disabled. Would you please mind giving up the seat? You're sitting in a disabled seat. Could you give it up for me, please?" And this is one of the reasons why I have, again, the sunflower lanyard, so that there is a visible marker saying I have a hidden disability. But there is a lot of resistance from people when they see that. Again, partially these days because of COVID. There were a lot of people that used the lanyard to not wear a mask. And the number of people that I've had since then look at me and say, "You don't need to wear that. You don't need to wear a mask now, so you don't need the exemption lanyard." This isn't a mask exemption lanyard, it's a hidden disability lanyard. No, it's an exemption lanyard. I know these things. Yeah, this is not going to go well. So that's the sort of stigma and fights that I come across when I'm out in the wilds. But I try to avoid going out into the wild these days as much as possible. Largely because of that. Because there's a lot of discomfort around it.
So has that impacted your ability to be as social as you want to be, to do some of the things that you would have previously wanted to do, but
yeah, it does make me think twice about travelling anywhere by public transport. So that almost immediately rules out anything in London, and largely anything further afield than my local town. If I'm not driving, I was lucky that I've been managed to keep my driving license. Once I declared the brain injury to the DVLA, they had to, they said, okay, we need your GP to confirm that you're safe to drive. So I had to go through all that process. But I was fortunate that at no point did they take it away and ask me to apply for it back. They let me keep it and just proved that I could keep it. So for anything that's too far afield, I will drive. But even that, I have to stop every couple of hours to have a rest and a nap. a 20-minute power nap, and then I can drive again. So I really do have to think about where I'm going. Is it more than 2 hours away? Because if it is, I've got to allow extra time. Do I need to take public transport? Is there another way I can do it? Is it a crowded area? Are there going to be a lot of people? Is there going to be a lot of sound and movement, and that's going to completely overwhelm me and bring on fatigue sooner? Because where there's a lot of sound, if there's too much sound and too much movement and too many people, I do get overwhelmed because there's just so much to process. My brain eventually gives out and I need to go and curl up in a corner of silence somewhere. So that has a big factor in where I go, and is another reason why I'm not going to the weekend event. I tend to avoid them these days. I am going to one on Saturday that's local, but again, it's local, so if things do get too much, I haven't got far to go to come back home again. So I can get a taxi there and a taxi back. I don't even need to worry about driving. But it does colour what I can do in my time. So a lot of my time is now spent with my friends in the computer, because if my friends live in the computer, I haven't got to worry about driving to meet them.
I do like it when my friends live in my computer.
It's helpful.
So good.
Okay, last question before we move on to audience questions. So if you have any questions that you would like to ask, please submit them now. Right. Tell us what you can take away from your experience. What good has come of it? Is there any good representation in media for you?
Funny you should mention that. Yes. Not a lot, but I have seen some. I'm not sure if you've seen the was it on Netflix or Prime? The Titans TV streamed series with like Nightwing and Hawk and Dove, DC characters. The characters Hawk and Dove were a paired couple. Hawk, being the very beefy bloke of the two, was a former American football player. And the storyline, at least in the series, I don't know about how it went in the comics, but in the series, he suffered as a result of playing American football, a head injury. And as they were going through his backstory, and when we were seeing things from his perspective, they started playing almost like a sine wave that sounds like tinnitus. And the first thing that came to my mind was, he's got post-concussion syndrome. And literally 2 minutes later, when he's talking to the doctor, that's exactly what she diagnosed him with. And the fact that something that I have that I hadn't seen anywhere on TV or video before suddenly was on screen in front of me was very whatever the opposite of disheartening is, enheartening. It was very warming to see this condition that isn't a big spectacular thing. It doesn't come from it does come from spectacular car crashes, but it can come from much lesser instances being shown as having happened from one of these lesser instances. It was a concussion picked up on the sport field, and how that affected his life from there, and that he has tinnitus, he has headaches, and he has this thing that's always going to be with him. And this character went on and did the superhero thing. Didn't have any powers, just put on a suit and started beating up bad guys, despite knowing that he could get more head injuries, probably would get more head injuries, but had to do something. And that was kind of a warming thing for me, that they had a character that has what I have. So yeah, the series I thought was quite good as well, but that was the bit for me. So when he left the series, I was actually kind of gutted. He was only a B grade character in the series, but I immediately locked in on the character because of the brain injury.
Well, it's good to hear that there is a good representation for you, because quite often it's like clutching for straws to find
it can be.
Good representation.
I haven't come across any others, and I know with a lot of other conditions, it's quite often the disabled character that's the villain. If you look at Unbreakable, or God, there's a fairly big list. I'll just stop with Unbreakable, but the list is fairly long. It's the disabled character that is the villain for some reason. So seeing the character with a disability be the hero was really cool for me. Or a hero, not the hero. A hero. But yeah, I would like to see more recognition, not just in fictional media, but in sports coverage, that actually this is a thing. Because there's a lot of sports where head injuries are a pretty common thing. Boxing, for one, it's the objective is to punch the other guy in the head. American football, again, very, very prone to head injuries. Rugby, very, very prone to head injuries. Soccer, believe it or not. And yes, if there's any Brits out there, yes, I do call it soccer. No, I'm not American. Anytime you head the ball, you could be putting yourself at risk of a brain injury. There are older soccer players who have similar symptoms to lifetime boxers because of the amount of times they've taken the ball to the head. So that there is a lot of sports and everyday things that people do that could give them a head injury that people don't realize. And I would like to see a little bit more awareness of that out there, especially in schools where these sports can be done week in, week out as part of the PE for the kids.
So, aside from media, what else can you take away from your experience?
Oh, that nothing is ever an end. The old me became the new me, and there are different things that I can do, and there are things that I am still doing in spite of what I can or can't do now, before. So it's, and for a lot of angles, it's driven me to do what I do. I suspect if I hadn't had the accident, I probably wouldn't be drumming like I am at the moment. I would have probably kept the acoustic kit, played it occasionally, but never actually done much with it. As it is, I'm now playing twice a week, health willing. That's another thing that I'm taking away, is that it is okay to not do things if you're not up to it. I do try and stream twice on drums a week, twice on games a week, but if at any point I'm having a bad pain day, if I've got a migraine, or if I'm just too absolutely shattered to contemplate trying to coordinate things, then I can and do cancel. And knowing that I can, taking away that I can do that, is something that I probably wouldn't have done pre-Lamppost. I would have pushed through and possibly put in what would come off as a inferior performance because of it. But knowing that, as I am now, I have to take these self-care times. There are things that I wouldn't do. So I've learned that, and that is a huge takeaway that I think anyone that doesn't have a chronic condition also needs to do.
Quite often, yeah. I mean, I would more than happily get to the point where we normalize it being okay to take breaks and to cancel when you need to take sick days and such forth. But even separate from disability or illness, just normalizing actually taking care of yourself and having a holiday, having the opportunity to just take days for yourself and
Absolutely.
not be constantly on it.
Yep.
It's at the end of the day, whether you're doing it for enjoyment or as a job, it still operates the same way as a job. You're still doing a lot of things. You're still providing a service. You are still needing the time to be ill, have a holiday, take a break. And
Absolutely.
the moment that we normalize that for anyone, the goddamn better.
100%, yeah. But the thing is that there's a lot of people that don't have these conditions that don't realize that they can do that. You know, I see folks at work who, outside of my team's actually pretty good at looking after themselves, but outside of my team, I'll see someone start logging in at 7 o'clock in the morning, and they'll work through, and they'll be messaging me when I know they're at lunch, saying, "Oh, could you just look at this for us?" I'm like, "You're at lunch, take a break." "Oh yeah, but I've got to get this done because I've got a deadline." I'll log out at the end of my day. They'll still be in, and I will get in the next morning and see that they were sending emails at 7 o'clock in the evening or later. And these people are running themselves into the ground on a treadmill that ultimately doesn't care. And
That's the thing. You're just a cog.
Yeah.
You're not. At the end of the day, if you run yourself into the ground, the only person it's ultimately going to impact is you. It's not. You're replaceable in your role. You're always replaceable in your role. Whether or not that's to a lesser or better degree is irrelevant. They will still always replace you. And the only person you're detrimenting by working yourself so hard is yourself.
Yep. Most companies, if you work yourself literally into the ground, they will have your job advertised as a vacancy before the ink's dry on your obituary. And a lot of folks don't realize that and will work themselves to the ground out of a sense of loyalty to the company that probably isn't deserved.
I mean, even the best of companies.
Yeah. Grind and hustle culture is horrible, and it has only gotten worse with costs of living crisis and that kind of thing. Like online, I keep hearing, especially from LinkedIn, which is my most hated of social platforms. It was Facebook, but LinkedIn, no. LinkedIn, you'll often see people like, work every day, work 60 hours a week in your 20s so that in your 30s you can buy a Lexus and go on holidays. It's like, but if you're burnt out in your 20s, who knows if you'll even be able to afford rent in your 30s because you've had to spend all that money on healthcare to try and fix yourself. And you don't bounce back from burnout. It's burning out. And burning out is not just from working too hard and doing really well. It's from hating and becoming so tired and drained. And you can't... There's no point to doing that when, as you both say, unfortunately, no matter how much you love the machine, it's a machine. And you might have people there that you really care about, and you might really care about that machine, but you're not going to be the be all and end all there, unfortunately. And like, it's really great if you have a good working environment and you want to work really hard for it, but you also deserve to have a life and not you weren't born to be a cog. You were born to be a human and technically to run ass naked through fields, but now we have buildings and money and, you know.
You heard it here first, everyone. You should be running out side naked through the fields of corn.
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of people, this is a slight tangent, but it's got me thinking, a lot of people are freaking out about these new photos of space. Because it really makes people realize, ooh, we're really small. And yeah, and that gives me a lot of comfort. Not because everything small means nothing. No, it means that whatever meaning we give this tiny little existence we have in this weird massive black swirling gases and stars and fire is incredible. And so it can be really fucking difficult, but when I sit down and realize it's a fucking miracle that we are alive with sentience and fucking computers, and we've taught rocks to speak to each other so that we can talk to each other across oceans of water that you can't drink nor breathe in. Why the fuck do I care for the machine?
Yeah, well, exactly.
Absolutely.
Well,
I have to, because to live and be comfortable. But that's why when there was a job I hated, and I know I was privileged enough to say, fuck you, job, I'm leaving. I said, fuck you, job, I'm leaving.
the fact is that you as a being already is so many small little chances that came together to make that happen. And you want to spend your entire life working yourself to the bone, making yourself ill to make someone else rich, to then ultimately end up wondering when you actually got to experience this miraculous thing that it took tiny things that we can't even see coming together to create, and you wanted to spend it burning yourself out, working yourself to illness. I
will clarify that our issue here is with the capitalist system, not with the individual workers, because obviously each worker that we're having to say the job is a cog that you're fitting into because other people have made it so that you can be replaced. Each person cannot be replaced, and that's not you and your skill set or who you are as a person. And there are people having to work so fucking hard and do so much to even have a roof over their heads, or not even be able to afford to have a roof over their heads. The issue is the system, and we weren't born for that system, which is the saddest fucking part. But the people that choose to grind, or say that other people need to decide to grind, and that run MLMs and fucking pyramid schemes to make money, to underpay other people and spend it on fancy cars they don't want, need, or just want to take a photo of for Instagram. Those are the people I have a problem with. They aren't living, they're posturing.
I mean, I'm speaking from a point of view where I did exactly that. I worked myself to illness. And so I've been there. I know that. And yeah, it's terrifying. It's terrifying. We are basically in a system where we don't get treated like people. We don't get treated like if you're ill, that you have worth, that if there's any sign of a potential lack of commitment to use, then you're disposable. And I don't think that's a situation where anyone should be in, and I think that really, we should spend more time talking about how we need to look after ourselves first over our thing that provides us the ability to pay for our house and our food and our petrol and... But anyway.
Yes, we've completely tangented
capitalist
there,
rant!
But, you know,
anarchy!
It's capitalism.
Tangent.
But that's why it is very nice to hear that your work have treated you well by the sounds of it. And, it seems that they've treated you in a way that you needed to be treated, and it is really difficult when other people, because they aren't living in the same experiences, when they see our experiences and go, well, this is where you should be in 3 steps. You're like, fuck you, I don't want to go, and it's like, okay, but you gotta. It's very difficult when other people, even if they have your best interests at heart, are reacting. It feels almost discompassionately occasionally sometimes, like your boss saying to you, go to therapy or fuck off, in the kindest of ways. Like, you would be right to be like, what the fuck? But seriously? But at the same time, they're not having the exact same experience, but they can see where it needs to go. So it is difficult, but it does seem like they did have your interests at heart, and it has worked, which is wonderful, which is what we want to hear.
Yeah, I'm let me try that again. I am well aware that I am one of the lucky few in that respect.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for that.
Okay, so we've got audience questions. I've got a few submitted, so let's get into them. Okay, so throughout the journey you've been on, because of this injury, who was the most helpful to you? Healthcare, professional, friend, family members?
Ooh, who was the most helpful? I've got to single out one person.
I mean, you could cover all options. It's up to you.
There's been, I think, the biggest help was probably the therapist that I went to for trying to get control over my emotions, because my emotional instability, be it if I was going to go way off on the happy scale, way off on the sad scale, way off on the angry scale, was causing a lot of problems, whichever way it went. And getting that mitigated and under control has been probably the most helpful aspect in the long run. And she had a good way of talking through things, and was willing to listen to me when I said that I don't necessarily understand how things are said in the first instance. And from the first meeting, she took that on board and would explain the same thing 2 times in 2 different ways before I even asked a question, which I found really helpful, because that gave me a much better way to grasp what she was trying to explain. So she was very, very helpful. Friends have been, I'll be honest, have been hot and cold. Some friends have been absolutely amazing, and been honest and said, hey, look, you stepped out of line here. You kind of need to say something, or are you sure that's what you meant to have said, when I've said something that had completely different words because I'd had a word salad moment. And there are other friends that have said what probably they thought might have been the good things to do, but have actually been things that I've found kind of frustrating. It's not any malice on their part. It's just one of those situations where going back to where I'm comparing what I could do as a drummer 6 years ago compared to what I can do now. There's a world of difference. And though in the early days they were saying, but I can see you're still a bloody good drummer now. But I'm not doing what I could do. And that was really they were being really nice and complimentary, but it was frustrating because I was comparing that to what I was seeing before, and that there was such a world of difference. Like, no, I'm really not. And that took a bit of getting over for me, because it was something that I found almost invalidated what I was feeling as a person at that time, because I wasn't doing things that were good. I was making a lot more mistakes than I am now. I've improved since then, but still nowhere near where I was. But they would say, oh yeah, you're still bloody good. It's like, no, I'm really not. And it really felt quite invalidating. and that came from a number of angles in different areas. So that there's been both sides of that. Again, with work colleagues, my boss at work, actually my previous boss, was really, really good and understanding. And when she joined the company, she joined the team, and I said, hi, nice to meet you. I know this is our first one-to-one. I need to disclose this to you. You've probably seen it in my HR file, but I need to make all this clear. And clearly she had read the HR file, because when I went through everything, she said, yep, I know. Thank you very much for pointing it out to me. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to try and make this work between us. And she was really accommodating right from the get-go, and has been ever since. She's now my boss's boss. But she still checks in on me. She still makes sure that things are going as they should, and she's still really bloody good. So the best two people, the therapist and my current boss's boss. There you go.
Okay. You talk about the slowed cognitive function needing more time to process. In conversation, would it help if people spoke slower or perhaps gave more pause to allow you time to take it in?
A little more pause, but not so much that you're talking to the speed that I've quite often dropped to during this session. By nature, and prior to the lamppost, I had a tendency to talk at Mach 3. So that the speed with which I'm talking at the moment is slower than normal, because I'm trying to give my brain a chance to put things in the right order before they leave the mouth. And I'm also manually filtering to try and avoid any unwanted expletives coming through, because that they are a common pitfall. In terms of other people speaking to me, one of the easiest ways for me to more readily understand someone is, as ridiculous as this might sound, is to watch their mouth move. I'm not deaf. I know I have tinnitus, but it doesn't stop me hearing. I've got a cutout at about 4K with a resonant at about 8 and then 12. But it's not deafness. So I can still hear perfectly well. But for some reason, I find it a lot easier to understand someone when I can see their mouth move. Now, if they happen to be eating while they're talking and they put their hand in front of their mouth, I instantly have to ask them to say what they're saying again, because I haven't understood what they said in that moment. And it really is the difference of seeing and not seeing. So when I'm in audio-only communications with people, I do have a much harder time understanding what's been said. And this goes up exponentially if they have a really, really strong accent. Again, if I was talking to someone from, say, Glasgow, taking a regular experience at work from this, if I can see the mouth moving, despite the strong Glaswegian accent, I can understand every word. As soon as they turn the camera off, I haven't got a chuffing clue what they're saying. And I have to ask them to repeat or to type it into chat so I can understand what they've said. And that could be a bit of an issue. And I've lost what the question was. Can you repeat the question, please? Sorry. I think I had another point to add, but I've forgotten what the question was.
You talk about the slowed cognitive function needing more time to process in conversation. Would it help if people spoke slower or perhaps gave more pause to allow you time to take it in?
I think for people to not necessarily talk more slowly, but to understand that I might come back to something they said 20 minutes ago, because it's not just a few seconds of slow understanding. It can be 10, 20 minutes. In some cases, it can be hours or the next day, where the penny will drop. Oh, that's what they meant. Well, shit, I cocked that up in my response, didn't I? Because I'd completely thought a completely different thing. So slowing down what you're saying doesn't really make a vast amount of difference. If I don't get it, I'll ask, and if I don't get it the second time, I probably will not ask out of embarrassment and try and think it over, and I'll get round to it in a couple of hours when I've finally understood what it was you were saying, because the understanding of what's being said can be that slow.
Ah, so you too suffer from the nodding and smiling, Bob.
Yes.
Yep.
Guilty as charged, my lad.
And the occasional just, yeah.
Oh, damn it, yes. You've got,
fucking clue.
You found me out.
It's one of the old CM tricks. Learn to laugh very convincingly while having no clue what's going on.
Yeah.
PvP, of course, hilarious.
The time spent in clubs has really, really helped get to this point where my ability to process what people are saying and what their meaning is behind things, or when they're using acronyms, I get to just go, I have no fucking clue what you're talking about, but yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah. Acronyms are a killer.
Thank you.
Come through work the other day. MACD. Now, this is a network engineer talking about stuff he's doing on the network. And in line with MACD, you going to McDonald's for lunch while you're doing this? What? Apparently it's move, add, change, and decommission. I had no idea. I thought he was genuinely talking about McDonald's.
One of my colleagues says TQ, and for a while I had no fucking clue what TQ meant. And she explained it meant thank you, and I was like, how the fuck have you got thank you? So T and Q is thank you. And I'm like, I get it now, but what the fuck? I had no clue what was going on there. And it's very cute now that I know, but it did take me about a month and a half just like mulling over T and Q before I said it out loud and went, oh, right, I found it. Okay, Jesus Christ. So when I had a new colleague, it was one of the first things I explained, just like, by the way, you might have this come up. There you go. There's the explanation, because I didn't get it.
Yeah, I used to have where I would either lose words or forget what acronyms meant, because sometimes you'll see the same acronym in the same sort of environment, but it could mean 2 or 3 different things. I had a crib list stuck to my screen on my desk at work, and then one morning the cleaner had taken it away, and either it had fallen off and she just cleaned it up or whatever, but all my words are gone. And for the next 2 days I was stuttering like a loon on all conversations. And this unfortunately included a conversation with auditors when I was supposed to be talking about the IT process we have around building new laptops, and I forgot so many buzzwords. I forgot. It was terrible. It got to the point that the InfoSec guy that was also on the call had to then jump in and explain, yeah, he's got a brain injury, forgets a lot of words, bear with us.
I also think that brings us quite nicely into one of our other audience questions about what does having text-based communication and internet access mean to you? And does it make conversations and communication easier for you? Because for me, acronyms and the internet are like my worst enemy. Like Twitch chat, quite often, because of the speed at which people are trying to type, acronyms are all over the shop. So I really struggle. So I think this is a pretty good question for you.
It's mixed, because if I'm talking about emails in terms of text chat, then they're a godsend, because I can read them at my own pace. And if there's any terms that I'm not familiar with, I can look them up before I reply. And I can take the time to soak in what's been said in the email. And it's done at my own pace, which is great. In terms of Twitch chat, everything, as you say, is happening live at the second. And if it's gone off the top of the screen while I'm streaming, I've forgotten what's been said already. So another thing that I say to folks in the channel is if I don't respond to you, it's not that I'm ignoring you, it's gone off the screen and I've forgotten. So don't be afraid to re-ask your question, and I will come around to it eventually when I see it again. But trying to understand what people type, especially if they are like me and have poor fine motor control and fat fingers and hit multiple keys and miss letters, and you get the weirdest looking words. I can't translate what that word was supposed to be. A lot of people can and can read what the sentence meant. I look at the sentence and that's just gibberish. I have no clue what you just said. Can you try again, please? And I have said that before. Asked someone to retype because I didn't understand what they were saying. And on occasion, there's been someone, I've been doing maybe a team game or something, and someone that's on voice with me at the time, I said, oh, what they said was this. So, oh, it's right. Okay. Yes. Right. You know, and then I could respond to it. So sometimes I need a translator. And where most of the team games that I have, it's actually one of my mods that is in voice with me, and he's really, really good at translating these things. So I don't know if Dav's out there, but Dav, if you're there, you're a really good translator, mate. Love your work. You saved me so many times.
Are you hiring out your services?
Twitch translator.
And another unfortunate thing that's related to that, it's more of a me problem than it is. I see it as more of a me problem because I wouldn't for a second want to put it on anyone else. Some people have trouble spelling words genuinely. Dyslexics or whatever they have trouble putting the right spelling into the word. So what I'm used to seeing as a word, they would maybe spell phonetically, and I would see the phonetic spelling and not translate that into what I'm expecting for that word, and thus not understand what they're saying. And that's caused me problems on a few times. Now, on those occasions where I've known that the person writing it has been dyslexic, I have asked them to try again because I haven't understood what they've said, and that's when Dav's come into his own and actually translated for me. And once he said that, I could then see what the phonetic spelling was. I was, oh, that's what it is, right? It's things like with exploration, putting sh instead of ti, things like that. It's where it's spelt as it's said rather than as you would as the dictionary has the spelling be. That can cause me problems, and I don't ever want to put that onto the person doing the writing because I see it as being on me to be able to translate that because it's not their fault.
Okay, and last question, I think, because I think the other one was already asked. Has your taste in games changed based on how you process information?
Yes. Ignore the fact that I play Forza Horizon, which is a racing game. I can't do things that are high speed. I'm fortunate that with games like Forza, there are power levels of car, and so they go at different speeds. The highest two or three levels of car I have trouble with. Anything from sort of the mid-range down, I'm fine with. And likewise, I do like shooty games. But games like Apex are way too quick. My youngest plays Apex, and is a bit of a demon.
Kill me.
But I tried to play Apex with my youngest a few weeks ago. I thought, well, I'll give this a go. And it was just too quick. I could not keep up. So whilst I like the shooty games, I can't do the run and guns. So Warframe, Apex, they are far, far too quick for me. I need something that is a bit slower paced. For a shooter game, I would look more at Sniper Elite, Ghost Recon. Games where you can sit there, scope out what's going on, understand, and then act.
Sniper Elite is one of my all-time faves, just purely because it allows me that pace at which I can enjoy that sort of game, where most games are very, very you're gonna do it this so quick, do it quick, you gotta do it quick. I'm like, no, I will spend hours lining up a shot, okay? do not get in the way of my process. I will get this shot, but it will take me a good few hours.
Yeah, 100%. And similarly, I do like MMOs because they've got a community element to them, and you've got that in-game multiplayer. And again, they need to be kind of slow-paced, but fortunately, once you get into your role in the MMO, you kind of have a pattern of keys that work, and rather than thinking about what's going on, you're looking at where the AoEs are and just move out of them, and you're hitting the same patterns on your abilities, so you don't not necessarily thinking about the ability. So it's not such a bad thing, but I still have to be a bit careful with the MMOs. If something is really fast paced, I have to step back and go, yeah, maybe this one's not for me.
How do you find co-op games and things with PvP?
I try and avoid PvP as much as possible. PvP tends to be fairly quick. In a lot of games that I've seen, it's almost banging you're dead, and if you haven't seen what's coming up, you've got no chance. So I am very, very poor at PvP. I have tried games like I forget what the Call of Duty arena game's called, but I've tried that and was abysmal at it. I've tried the Call of Duty PvP stuff and was abysmal at it because again it was too fast. On any COD map where I could sit in a corner and set up a machine gun or a sniper and just take pot shots, I was great. But anywhere where I needed to react and move, there were so many flashes and lights and things happening on the screen, and the games are good at telling you where the shots have come from. But what you end up with is a mess of red lines on your screen, and I've got no idea where to turn. At which point I've processed and I'm dead. So I'm not too good at those.
It's exactly the same as what I experience. I try and explain it to other people as like basically audio visual lag, kind of where like somebody who doesn't have cognition issues will be like, why is this audio like seeming to be like just a few frames too late, and it doesn't seem to match up, so I'm not quite sure where stuff is coming from or why it's happening. It's just kind of how my brain processes all the time. However, I also have the ADHD gremlin in my brain that's like, haha, play PvP and go absolutely fucking ham. So I'm really bad at it, but I really want to do it all the time. Which has led to some very interesting occurrences of either doing really, really well for having no idea why, or completely fucking it up but finding it really hilarious. So it's pretty good. Although I have also found that games that go too slow are very frustrating.
Yeah, if a game dictates a slow pace, that frustrates me because I do like to move at my pace.
Yes.
If something's happening too slow for me, my brain's still trying to work at its own pace, and it starts over calculating, and again things go south from that point. So yeah, I'm right with you on that one.
Warframe I definitely think is an interesting one you've called out, because I've played Warframe for 5 or 6 years now, and because you can solo so much of it, I found that it is actually quite good for the issues with cognition that I have, because you can get a lot of frames that are like chunkier as well, so they physically move slower and all the attacks are slower, but you do more damage in like, so they'll do like bigger tankier hits instead, but it's slower to run with. So it can actually be quite fun to do a multiplayer with that, where everyone else sprints off and kills everything, and you're just there with the sniper rifle just lumbering through and punching shit, and then pew, just off to somebody on the other side of the map. It's very amusing. So
yeah, I mean, the few times that I've played Warframe with friends, they've gone off and done their thing, and I'm sort of halfway through the map, still trying to work out where the heck I'm supposed to be going, and they're like,
yeah.
"Come on, we finished." Thanks.
Yeah, it can definitely be a bit like that. I think it's a game if you're willing to try it solo or find somebody to walk through it with you, it can be a lot of fun. And then when you start getting used to it, it does get a lot more. It becomes a lot more fluid, I found. Just to sort of be like, I'm going to bullet jump there, and that way it's fast, but I know where I've ended up because that's where I was looking. So
yeah, I did try getting into oh god, what was it? The MMO in the same world as Skyrim. I've completely forgotten the name of.
Elder Scrolls Online.
That's the one. And a friend of mine very kindly offered to walk me through. I thought, great, easy start. I can do this. He can show me what's what. Unfortunately, he went off at his pace, and I was just following along, not really understanding what the quests were, why we were doing it, and what was going on. And
yeah,
you know, again, lovely guy, really wanting to help, but not quite cognizant of, ironic wording, of the fact that I couldn't keep up mentally.
I find that with a lot of co-op games. So especially where it's like big groups where you get to do your own thing for things like Valheim, for things like V Rising, anything that has a learning curve that you can play in large groups, I find it extremely difficult to enjoy those games because everyone else goes off at their pace. And I'm still trying to just figure out how the basic functions of the game work, and they've already built like 3 castles and beaten all of the bosses. And I think that's something that I personally would, I mean, from the sounds of it, it's not something specific to me. It's something that is quite common among those with disabilities or neurodivergencies, that I feel like having some more awareness of the different paces that people operate at, and that if you're trying to help someone get into a game or catch up with you in a game, you should be working at their pace, not yours.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of our podcast. Before we do our sign off, is there any last words of wisdom or tidbits that you would like to share with us?
Oh Lord. Nothing springs immediately to mind. I think I've probably said everything that I would likely have said. So all those tidbits that I would give away are buried in everything I've already said. Other than self-care is really, really important, and stay hydrated.
Okay. Can I get a... Yeah, oh, you've already done it. A shout out for our guest, Nitebytes, and for our lovely, wondrous co-host, as always. So, next podcast stream will be in 2 weeks. Next stream for me will be on Sunday. So, I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day or evening. I hope you enjoyed this. If you'd like to keep in contact outside of stream, do follow on the socials and the Twitters and the Instagrams, and go join various Discords. And yes, have a good one all, and say bye all!
Thank you very much for having me. Bye-bye.
Oh, bye-bye.